You can't just evict someone from their own house, especially when that person is your son. But my dad's new fiancée, a woman who treated my home like her personal kingdom, tried to do just that. She packed my things into boxes, telling me I had until the weekend to get out. The room I had lived in since I was 12 was going to be her new baby's nursery. My dad stood right beside her, nodding along as if it were the most reasonable thing in the world. That smirk, though, the way it disappeared when I told her I owned the place, that was the single most satisfying moment of my life. I'm telling you, it was like a scene out of a movie. You ever have one of those moments where the world just pauses? That's what it felt like. Everything I'd been holding in for months, all the disrespect, all the anger, it all came out in that one simple fact. I wasn't some overgrown kid living with his dad. This was my house, and they were about to find out exactly what that meant. This whole mess started 9 years ago when my mom died. It was cancer, and I was only 12. My dad, he was a wreck. He couldn't handle it, couldn't handle me. It was too much for him. So I went to live with my grandparents just outside the city. They had this big, old house on a few acres of land, and they were the only family I really had left. The house was a bit of a mess, but it had good bones. For bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a big kitchen, and a whole lot of land that backed up to the woods. I remember spending my childhood out there with my best friend Ian, building forts, getting into trouble, just being kids. He was my ride or die. He still is. Dad would come on weekends and holidays, but even as a kid, I noticed something was off. He was always so controlling. He'd show up and immediately start moving things around. He'd tell my grandpa how to maintain the property, and he'd make all these decisions about my life without asking anyone. It was like he was a tourist in his own family, only showing up to rearrange the furniture and then leaving again. I didn't realize at the time, but he was setting a pattern, this need to control everything and everyone around him. And I was too young to fight back. My grandparents were amazing. They were the ones who really raised me. My mom was an only child, and so am I. So when my grandparents started getting sick a few years back, there was only one name on the will. I inherited the whole damn thing when Grandpa died. The house, the land, even his beat-up pickup truck, and a decent chunk of cash they'd saved. My dad had used my mom's life insurance money to renovate parts of the house over the years. But he always acted like he was doing me a huge favor, like I should be eternally grateful that he was investing in the place. He never saw it as his responsibility as a parent. He saw it as an investment he was entitled to control. I found out about the inheritance from the lawyer right after my grandpa's funeral. My dad was standing right there when I took the call. The look on his face when he realized I, a 21-year-old college student, owned the house he had been acting like a landlord in for years, it wasn't guilt. It was irritation, like I had just complicated his life by existing. Ian was there that day. He was helping me clean out Grandpa's tools. Dad just stormed off after the call, and Ian just looked at me and said, "So, you own the house now? Damn, Thanksgiving is going to be awkward." We never talked about it again. Dad just pretended it never happened. He kept acting like he was the man of the house, making all the decisions, controlling everything from what we watched on TV to when I could have friends over. It was 2 years after my mom died that my dad started dating again. Nothing serious at first, just random dates. Then about 6 months ago, he drops this bomb. He's got a new girlfriend, a 30-year-old preschool teacher named Jennifer. She came with 2 kids under 10 and enough emotional baggage to sink a small ship. Jennifer had this whole young professional mom aesthetic going on. She drove a spotless white SUV, wore athleisure outfits, and had these strong opinions about organic food that she'd share whether you asked or not. Her kids were named Hunter and Paisley, the kind of names that scream country club membership roster. But they were the most perfectly groomed little sociopaths you could ever imagine. The first time Dad brought her over, she walked around the house taking mental notes. I caught her opening cabinets and checking expiration dates on our pantry items. "Your grandmother had such interesting taste," she said, running her finger along the vintage wallpaper. "It's so authentic." She said authentic like it was a polite way of saying trashy. But my dad just ate it up. He was a complete fool for her. Her kids were even worse. Hunter, the 8-year-old, spent the entire visit touching everything he wasn't supposed to while maintaining perfect eye contact. and Paisley, the 6-year-old, knocked over my grandma's favorite plant and then looked at me like it was my fault for putting it where she could reach it. When I tried to mention the plant, Jennifer just laughed it off. Oh, kids will be kids. They're just so excited to be in such a big house. They're not used to having so much space to explore. Ian came by later that evening and saw the tail end of their visit. After they left, he looked around the living room where Jennifer had already repositioned some of my grandma's throw pillows. Well, she seems fun, he said with a straight face. Nothing says I'm not planning to redecorate your entire life, like rearranging furniture on the first visit. My dad, though, was completely smitten. He started spending more money on dates, bought new clothes, got his teeth whitened. Classic midlife crisis stuff. Except instead of a motorcycle, he found himself a ready-made family that came with built-in validation. Jennifer played him like a fiddle, asking his opinion on everything, deferring to his wisdom, making him feel like the big, strong provider. Within 3 months, she'd practically moved in. Her stuff started showing up in my dad's bathroom. Her car was in our driveway more than it was at her apartment. Hunter and Paisley had claimed the guest room as their own, and the kids, oh God, the kids. They went from perfectly behaved little angels to absolute demons the second they got comfortable. Hunter would accidentally break my stuff and then act confused when I got mad. Paisley would go through my room when I wasn't home, mess with my things, and then deny everything. Every time I complained, Jennifer would give me this wounded look and suggest that maybe I just wasn't used to having kids around. My dad naturally took her side every single time. They're just kids, son. Cut them some slack. By month 4, she wasn't even pretending anymore. She'd gone from grateful guest to woman of the house faster than you could say gold digger. She started small, rearranging the living room furniture while Dad was at work, then acting like it had always been that way. She replaced my grandma's dish towels with her own organic cotton ones, and threw away food she didn't approve of, replacing it with expensive organic stuff. But the real power move was how she started treating me like I was some deadbeat nephew who had overstayed his welcome. She started making comments about my music being too loud after 9 p.m. because the children needed their sleep. "Sweetie, could you try to keep your music down after 9 p.m.?" she'd ask one Tuesday night while I was studying. The children need their sleep, and some of us have real jobs in the morning. As if being a college student in my own house was somehow less legitimate than teaching finger painting to toddlers. My dad would just nod along, agreeing with her. "She's right, son. We need to be considerate of everyone living here." Her kids got worse, too. Hunter figured out exactly which buttons to push and started doing it. He'd wait until I was on the phone or in the middle of something important, then start making noise or asking me stupid questions. One day, he asked why I didn't have a girlfriend. When I told him to mind his own business, he informed me that his mom said it was because I was a loser who lived with his dad. "Your mom says a lot of things," I told him. "Most of them are bullshit." "I'm telling," he yelled and ran off to find Jennifer. 5 minutes later, Dad's in my room, giving me a lecture about being a good role model and watching my language around the kids. Jennifer stood behind him with this wounded expression that would have won her an Oscar. Dad's face went red, and he demanded I apologize. "For what?" I asked. "For telling the truth, for being disrespectful to Jennifer and setting a bad example for the kids," he said. I told him I wasn't apologizing for anything. That's when Jennifer's mask slipped for just a second. "Maybe it's time you started acting like part of the family instead of some entitled teenager," she said, her voice sharp. The venom in her tone was unmistakable. Later that night, I found Paisley in my room again, going through my desk drawers. "What are you doing in here?" I asked. She looked up at me with those dead, shark-eyed kids get when they're planning something evil. "Mommy said I could look for paper for my art project." "Mommy doesn't get to give permission for my room," I said. "Get out." "You're mean," she said, but she was smiling when she said it. "Mommy says you're just jealous because Daddy loves us more now." I escorted her out and locked my door. The kid was literally repeating stuff her mother had said about me. Jennifer was poisoning her kids against me. The final straw came that Sunday. I came home from Ian's to find Jennifer had rearranged my room. My desk was in a different corner. My posters had been taken down, and my bed was made with different sheets. What the hell are you doing? The look on her face. I asked when I found her. The smugness just melted away, leaving this vacant, terrified expression. It was like I just ripped the rug out from under her entire life. She was still sitting on my bed, surrounded by my packed boxes, looking at them like they were evidence of a crime she had just committed, which in a way they were. "This is insane," she kept saying, almost to herself. "You can't just. This isn't how families work." And I just stared at her. You're right. Families don't usually try to steal each other's houses. The hatred in her eyes when she looked up at me, it was pure, unfiltered. You have no idea what you've just done. I am pregnant, and we need this house more than you do." That was the last straw for me. The audacity. She got pregnant to secure her spot, to lock down my dad, and now she was weaponizing her unborn child against me. "Maybe you should have asked nicely," I said, and the smile on my face felt a little dangerous. "This isn't over." "Good luck with that," she shot back, and I walked out of my room. I wasn't just walking out on a stupid argument. I was walking out on my childhood home and the memory of my family. The home that they had tried to steal from me. I was done playing nice. I texted Ian immediately. The message was simple, deploying the nuclear option. They tried to pack my stuff without permission. His response came back in seconds. How'd they take the property ownership revelation? "About as well as you'd expect," I told him. "Dad's having an alpha male meltdown, and Jennifer looks like she just watched her master plan burn to the ground." I spent that weekend doing my own kind of research. Not homework for class. This was something else entirely. This was war council time. Ian showed up Saturday morning with coffee and his laptop. He took one look at me and knew I wasn't kidding around. "All right," he said, setting the coffee on the counter. "What's the plan?" I told him the plan. I was evicting them. Both of them. Ian's eyebrows shot up. "Even your dad?" "Especially my dad," I said, and the words felt like stones leaving my mouth. It hurt to say them, but I knew it was the only way forward. He made his choice when he tried to force me out of my own house. Ian grinned. "Ruthless. I like it. What do you need?" We spent the rest of the morning on our laptops, hunched over my kitchen table. We were looking up tenant rights, eviction procedures, property law. I knew I had the upper hand, but I wanted to do this right. By the book. No loopholes for them to squirm through. Turns out, when you let people establish residency in your house, which my dad and Jennifer had definitely done, getting them out requires proper legal channels. But here was the beautiful part. When you own the property and they're not on any kind of lease or rental agreement, you've got most of the power. Ian found the relevant laws for our state. You had to give 30 days written notice for month-to-month tenants. But if they're not paying rent and there's no lease, they're considered tenants at will, and you can terminate their residency with notice. 30 days notice. But here was the really fun part. Ian scrolled down the page, his eyes wide. "Dude, check this out. If they refuse to leave after notice, you can file for eviction and have them legally removed, but you can also sue for fair market rent for the entire time they've been living there without a lease, plus any damages to the property." My heart started pounding. My dad had been living here rent-free for 9 years. Jennifer and her kids for about 6 months. We looked up market rates for a 4-bedroom house in our area, and the number was staggering. I did a quick calculation. My dad would owe me about $200,000 in back rent. Jennifer, for her 6 months, would owe about $15,000. Ian let out a low whistle. That's some expensive house playing right there. It was ruthless. It was cold. But my dad had made his choice. He had chosen Jennifer. He had chosen to try and evict me from my own house to make room for her mother. He had called me a spoiled brat and an overgrown kid, and had told me I was unreasonable for not wanting to be homeless. He had sided with the woman who was trying to poison her kids against me. He had sacrificed our relationship on the altar of his midlife crisis, and I was about to give him the receipt. The next week was a blur. I went to the courthouse on Monday and filed the paperwork. Tuesday, I met with a lawyer, a family friend of Ian's, just to make sure I wasn't missing anything. He confirmed everything Ian and I had found. I had a rock-solid case. Wednesday, I had the eviction notices printed up on official letterhead, complete with my name as the property owner and the signatures of the lawyer. I sealed them in envelopes and just waited. I didn't want to spring this on them individually. I wanted it to be a show. I wanted them both there to witness it. Thursday evening, they were both home. I saw Jennifer's SUV in the driveway and my dad's truck. I went into the living room and set the folder of legal documents on the coffee table. "We need to talk," I said. My dad was still in his post-superiority mode, a little quiet since our last confrontation, but he still had that arrogant air about him. "If this is about your attitude problem, I don't want to hear it. You've been acting like a spoiled brat, and it needs to stop." I sat down. Jennifer was sitting next to him on the couch, one hand on her belly like she was protecting the baby from my bad vibes. "Actually," I said, "this is about your housing situation." She looked at me, a little confused. "What about our housing situation?" I opened the folder and pulled out the 2 envelopes. I slid one to my dad and one to Jennifer. "You're both being evicted. 30 days notice, effective immediately." The silence was magnificent. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. My dad picked up his notice and read it like it was written in Sumerian. "What the hell is this?" he finally said, his voice quiet at first, and then it exploded. "You can't do this. I'm your father, you little—" "Watch me," I said, cutting him off. Jennifer was screaming. "That's illegal. You can't kick out a pregnant woman." "Actually," I said, "I can." "But we don't pay rent," she said like that was some kind of gotcha. "Exactly," I said, my voice calm. "You're tenants at will, which means you have even fewer rights than people with leases." My dad stood up, and I could see that vein in his forehead. That meant he was about to lose it completely. He called this the most ungrateful, disrespectful thing I'd ever done. He went off about how he raised me, put money into this place, and had been taking care of everything. And I just looked at him and said, "Now you can take care of your own housing, like every other adult on the planet." Jennifer was reading through the notice again, her eyes darting across the page. I could see the exact moment she found the part about back rent. Her eyes went wide, and she looked up at me. "What is this? Owed compensation for unlawful occupancy?" "That's the lawsuit I'm filing for the rent you should have been paying this whole time," I said. "Fair market value for a 4-bedroom house, calculated monthly for the duration of your unauthorized residency." My dad was staring at me, a look of disbelief on his face. "How much?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "For you," I said, "about $200,000. For Jennifer and her kids, about $15,000 and counting." The color drained from both of their faces. They looked at each other, then back at me. Jennifer whispered, "You can't be serious." Dead serious. I wasn't completely heartless, though. I decided to give them an out, a small olive branch to show that I wasn't a monster. "You can avoid the lawsuit by vacating within 30 days and signing an agreement not to pursue any claims against the property." My dad sat back down hard on the couch. $200,000, he said again, like he couldn't comprehend it. "Yeah," I said. "That's what it costs to live in a house like this for 9 years. Who knew?" Jennifer's voice got shrill. "This is insane. We're going to be homeless. I'm pregnant." "Not my problem," I said, my voice cold. "You should have thought about that before you tried to steal my house." My dad was quiet for a long time, staring at the eviction notice like it might change if he looked at it hard enough. When he finally asked where they were supposed to go, I suggested anywhere but here. Jennifer had that apartment, right? The one she was so eager to rent to me. "That's a 1-bedroom, she wailed. "We can't fit 3 adults and 2 kids in a 1-bedroom apartment." 3 adults. I asked her, confused. "My father and her mother," she explained. I laughed. A real, genuine laugh. "Oh, she thought her mother was still invited to this party. That's adorable." My dad just put his head in his hands. He couldn't do this. All his money was tied up in this place. His money was tied up in my place. He was finally getting a taste of what he had so cavalierly tried to inflict on me. Jennifer started crying, but they were the angry, frustrated sobs of someone whose manipulation tactics weren't working anymore. "How could you do this to us? We were building a life together. We were going to be a family." "The baby," she wailed. "The baby." Her crying stopped instantly, and the look she gave me was pure hatred. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Really?" I said. "Let me guess. Birth control failure? Happy accident? Or maybe a surprise pregnancy that just happened to occur right when you needed to cement your position in the house?" The silence that followed was magnificent to watch. It was a complete show. My dad and Jennifer, they didn't just quietly pack their things and leave. No way. They tried everything they could think of to fight back. My dad, he went for the emotional manipulation route. He called me screaming about how I was an ungrateful, disrespectful brat. He said I was destroying the family. He told me I was ruining his life and how he couldn't believe his own son would do this to him after everything he had sacrificed. And I just listened. I didn't yell back. I just listened to him lay out all the ways I was a terrible person, and I let him get all out. Because at some point, his rage just sounded like a broken record. He had made his choice, and now he was living with the consequences. There was no going back for us. Not after this. Jennifer, on the other hand, went full scorched earth. She called my university to complain about my unstable home environment. She called the police to report a domestic disturbance when I asked her to move her car out of the driveway. She even tried to call Child Protective Services on herself, claiming I was creating an unsafe environment for the children. That one backfired beautifully when the CPS worker pointed out that maybe she shouldn't have her kids living somewhere she felt was unsafe. The whole thing was just pathetic. But the real fireworks started when she tried to take me to court. She filed a complaint claiming I was evicting her because of her pregnancy status. It was classic Jennifer, weaponizing her situation to get what she wanted. The hearing was a thing of beauty. I had my lawyer with me, and he just laid it all out. Jennifer had to get up there and explain that she was my dad's girlfriend, had been living there for 6 months, had no lease, and paid 0 rent. And then I got to tell the judge how they had tried to force me out of my own house and convert my bedroom into a nursery without my permission. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with a very dry sense of humor, just listened to it all. She basically told Jennifer, with this perfect, deadpan expression, that you can't claim pregnancy discrimination when you're being evicted for trying to illegally evict the actual property owner. Case dismissed. Just like that. Jennifer's face was priceless. It was the moment she realized her manipulative tactics, the ones that had worked on my dad so well, were completely useless in the real world. She was finally face to face with a reality she couldn't charm, couldn't cry her way out of. The next couple of weeks were quiet. The 30-day deadline was looming. I still saw them around the house, but they were mostly silent. My dad looked like he had aged 10 years in the past month. Jennifer was a ghost. They were scrambling, trying to find a place to live, but finding housing for an unemployed pregnant woman, her 2 kids, a 52-year-old man with mediocre credit, and potentially a grandmother, it was harder than they thought. One evening, about a week before the deadline, my dad suggested we work out some kind of arrangement. He could pay me rent to stay. Market rate. We could make it official. Nope, I said. He started to argue, but I cut him off. You had the chance to treat me with respect and have a conversation like an adult. Instead, you try to force me out of my own house. Actions have consequences. But I'm your father, he said, and there was this desperate, almost pleading tone to his voice that I hadn't heard in years. Yeah, I said, and you're also the guy who tried to evict me from my own property to make room for your girlfriend's mother. Father of the Year material right there. He went quiet after that, just stared at me. It was like he was finally, truly seeing me for the first time. Not as his son, not as a kid he had to control, but as a person who had been pushed too far. The real bomb, though, the real, mind-blowing twist came about 5 weeks in. There were a few days past the eviction deadline, and I was about to go file the paperwork to have them legally removed. I was at Ian's place, and my phone rang. It was my dad. His voice sounded weird, shaky, not angry, just broken. We need to talk, he said. About what? I asked, my voice guarded. You've got 3 days left to move out. About the baby, he said, and something in his tone made me pay attention. I could hear the exhaustion, the utter defeat in his voice. Something's not right. What about it? I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. Can you come home? I need to show you something. I went home. I found my dad sitting at the kitchen table, a stack of papers in front of him. He looked like a stranger. He'd aged so much. His shoulders were slumped. His hands were shaking. He looked at me, and there were tears in his eyes. He slid a paper across the table to me. Paternity test results. The baby isn't mine, he said, his voice quiet. A flat statement of fact. I stared at the paper, my brain tried to process it. What do you mean? Jennifer, what? He explained that Jennifer had wanted him to sign up for better health insurance at work to cover the pregnancy. The insurance company required blood work for pre-existing conditions. And while they were doing that, they ran some generic screening panels. It turns out he couldn't be the father. Wrong blood type. The genetics didn't match. So whose baby is it? I asked. Her ex-husband's, he said. They were still sleeping together when she started dating me. The whole thing was a setup. The entire time, she had been playing him, using him. The pregnancy, the rush to move in, the push to get rid of me. It was all a calculated, cold-hearted plan to secure her future. I asked him where she was. Upstairs, he said. He'd confronted her that morning. She tried to claim the test was wrong. She tried to say it didn't matter because he'd be a better father than her ex anyway. When that didn't work, she'd gone back to the victim routine. How could you abandon me and the baby? She'd wailed. He just looked at me, a hollow expression in his eyes. I'm a fool, he said. I've been a complete and utter fool. He had sacrificed our relationship. He had alienated his own son. He had put all his trust, all his love, into a woman who had been manipulating him the entire time. And now, she was still upstairs in my house pretending to be the victim with another man's baby inside of her. The emotional climax of the whole saga wasn't a shouting match or a courtroom victory. It was this quiet, devastating moment. The moment my father realized the truth. The moment he realized he had given up everything for a lie. He was finally looking at her for who she was. And he was finally looking at me, his son, with a look of pure regret. This was the point of no return. The game was over. Now, staring at the paternity test results. My dad's face was in his hands. The entire house of cards she had built, it was all just gone. It was a complete, final, and total betrayal. Not just to me, but to him. And in that moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I slid the paper back across the table. Where is she now? I asked. Upstairs, he said, his voice muffled. I confronted her. She tried to say the test was wrong. She tried to say it didn't matter. Then she started crying. And what did you do? He looked at me, and his eyes were so tired, so defeated. I told her to leave. I told her the eviction notice still stands, and she needs to be out of the house. With her kids. All of it. It was the first time I'd seen my dad take a stand against her. The first time he had looked at her manipulation and called it what it was. And it was only because he had been hurt so deeply that he finally saw the truth. It was a sad, pathetic end to a relationship he had been so proud of. He asked me what he was supposed to do. I didn't have an answer. I just told him to do what he told me to do a few weeks ago, act like an adult. He went upstairs, and I just sat in the kitchen, listening. I heard the shouting, the pleading, the crying. Then I heard him tell her that if she wasn't gone in 24 hours, he was calling the police. It was a final, undeniable ultimatum. The end of the game. The next morning, I came downstairs, and Jennifer was in the living room. Her kids were there, too, looking confused. She was on the phone, crying into it, talking about unforeseen circumstances and a sudden change of plans. I walked right past her, made some coffee, and sat at the kitchen table. My dad came downstairs. He didn't look at me. He just started packing his own things. A few boxes, just the essentials. Jennifer saw him, and her eyes got wide. What are you doing? She asked, her voice laced with panic. You can't just leave. We're a family. You're going to abandon me and your children. He didn't even look at her. I'm not abandoning my children, he said quietly. I'm not the father of yours. And as for you, you should have thought about that before you try to pull a fast one. She started screaming then, really screaming. She threw something, a framed picture of her and my dad that she had put on the mantel. It shattered against the wall. You'll regret this, she yelled. You'll regret the day you ever let your son come between us. He's ruined everything. My dad just kept packing. He finished, grabbed the boxes, and walked out to his truck. He didn't say goodbye to Jennifer. He didn't even say goodbye to me. He just got in his truck and left. Jennifer was gone by the end of the day. She had to. The cops were called, and a formal trespass notice was issued. The kids were crying. They didn't understand what was happening, and honestly, I felt bad for them. They were just pawns in their mom's game. I watched her drive away, her white SUV pulling out of the driveway for the last time. It was a quiet, anticlimactic ending. No grand speeches, no last-minute apologies. Just the silence of a house that was finally, truly my own. After they were all gone, I just stood in the living room. The house felt empty. The silence was deafening. I thought I would feel happy or victorious. But all I felt was this hollow, empty ache. The house was mine, but my dad was gone. The man who raised me, the man I had always looked up to, even with his flaws, he was just gone. I had won the battle for my home, but I had lost my father in the process. It was a bittersweet victory. Ian came over later that night. We just sat on the couch in the quiet house, with no throw pillows in sight. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he just put a hand on my shoulder. "You did the right thing, man," he said. "Did I?" I asked. I kicked my own father out of the house. I could have just let it be. Let him live here. He's my dad. Yeah, Ian said. He is. But he made his choice. He sided with her, and he tried to kick you out of your own house. You stood up for yourself. You drew a line, and you showed them that actions have consequences. He chose her and her kids over you. You didn't do anything to him that he didn't already try to do to you. He was right. I had to choose myself. I had to choose my own boundaries, my own self-respect. The last few months have been quiet. I'm alone in the house now, and it's strange. The house is mine. I can rearrange the furniture, hang up pictures of my mom, and live my life on my own terms. I'm not a kid anymore, and I'm not a victim. I haven't heard from my dad since he left. No calls, no texts. I have the house. He has whatever he has now. I don't know where he went. I don't even know if I want to know. Some wounds just don't heal. But I'm okay. I have a great job. I'm still a student. I have a friend who would go to war with me with a laptop and a bag of donuts. And I have my home, a place that is truly mine, a place where I can finally start to heal and move on. The best revenge isn't a single moment of victory. It's the long, slow, quiet journey of living your best life after someone else tried to take it from you. It's about finding peace, finding your way forward, and realizing that sometimes the only way to save yourself is to let go of the people who are holding you back, even if they're family.